You are listening to Beyond the Wheel, a podcast about the people and ideas that drive the RV community forward.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to Beyond the Wheel. Joining us today is Tom Johnson, president and co-founder of JG Lubricants. They provide sample testing kits that will allow you to test the quality and overall health of your oil and coolant in your RV, tow vehicle, and as well as important systems such as your RV generator and aqua-hot system. So let's jump into the conversation with Tom and learn more about this valuable service.
Okay, Tom, thanks for joining us today. As we do with all of our guests, can you tell us a little bit about your background and how you came up with the idea for private owners to be able to do a fluid analysis on their vehicles? I have always thought it was for fleet companies or certified inspectors only, so it's very interesting that private owners can also do this.
Yes, well, a little bit about my background. I worked for quite a number of years for General Motors, and specifically for Allison Transmission. Most Class A diesel pushers and front engine drive motorhomes, large motorized homes, will have an Allison transmission. And as part of my job there at Allison, as the oils engineer, we did a lot of RVs and things like that, installing transmissions, or, the chassis manufacturers bought Allison transmissions. And so because of that, I followed all the things having to do with oil and usage of oil. And because I approved them for Allison worldwide for both military and commercial vehicles. So that's my background. So I know a lot about engine oils and transmission fluids. And I actually retired from General Motors and Allison Transmission back in 2009 and really wasn't through working yet. So I wanted to start this company because I knew a lot of folks out there could use this kind of information because it's a really good diagnostic tool, and most people don't know that it's available to them. So I now have available to folks packages or kits that they can buy from our website, www.jglubricantservices.com. And those are oil kits and coolant kits. And so they can check those important components on their motorhomes. But that's sort of my background, and that's how I got to where I am today. I knew it was an important tool, diagnostics tool, from my engineering work at Allison. I worked in Allison product engineering for 26 years.
So you might have just answered my second question, Tom. I was going to ask you, is it something, is the fluid analysis something that is new to the RV industry, but it sounds like maybe you started this in 2009. Is that the beginning of fluid analysis, being able to perform this on the RV world?
Well, it was out there before that. I don't know how much. I really haven't done the research on that, but I know there are several firms out there like us who do oil analysis. A lot of them, in fact, most of them don't do coolant analysis. That's one thing that we do that's different. So if you have a vehicle, you're going to have a cooling system and an oil system. So that sets us apart a little bit. We are able to diagnose, run samples on all those components, whether it be cooling system, or a transmission, or an engine, or generator, differential, hydraulic system. We can run them all. Even aqua-hot heating systems, we can run those as well. And so I think the RV customers were being served, but probably just a fraction of those. And frankly, I think when we sat down, we looked at the RV industry based on my experience back at Allison, and we saw that they were probably underserved and that people didn't know you could buy direct. And so we started a marketing program, and that really started taking off when we got together with the National RV Inspectors Association. We are sole suppliers to those folks. So that really opened it up more and more to a lot of people who didn't know about this. And so we work hand in hand with the National RV Inspectors Association to get the word out on fluid analysis.
That's actually how I found you guys, from the NRVIA. And before that, I was part of that group of people that did not know that this was a service that existed. So that was a smart move on you guys.
Well, thank you. Yeah, many people don't know it's available, but, in the military, it's been around since World War II. I mean, back then it was really highly specialized, and it was only for the military. But now it's available to anyone out there. And we have important data. It's both accurate and repeatable and historical. So there's a lot of good information for folks to find if they can run their oils and coolants longer, or if they might have problem in their system that they wouldn't know about any other way. I like to say it allows you to see inside the component.
Yeah, you mentioned being able to maybe go a little longer between oil changes, but what are the other benefits of a fluid analysis, not just the oil analysis, but like you said, the other systems as well?
Well, because systems are made up of components, one of the components happens to be the oil or the coolant if it's a cooling system. But let's focus on oils for a minute. Let's say it's a transmission or an engine. The fluid or the oil is probably the chief factor in that component working properly, because if it doesn't have oil in it, it can't function at all. And it uses the oil to carry loads and propel the vehicle through the torque converter and things like that. So the oil actually does something. So it's a very important factor in that component. That's why it's so important to look at these things. And so really, when you're doing this, there's really kind of two things I would say I would categorize. One of them is that it increases driveline and power generation component performance, reliability, and durability. So if you're monitoring this, your overall reliability of your vehicle is far better than it would be just by changing oils. Because if you're changing oils or coolants and just throwing them out, you're throwing out the data that goes with that you could have had to see what's going on inside. The second factor would be that it really saves you a lot of money because it minimizes your maintenance costs overall. Let's say you normally change your oil in a motorhome every 5,000 miles or once a year. You just do that religiously, and you're doing a good thing, and you're being a good steward of that motorhome, taking care of it. But in many cases, I know this because I worked in oils, both engine oils and transmission oils, for about 30 years. The oils today are so good that most motorhomes, let's say a Class A diesel pusher, those oils can easily go 10, 15, 20,000 miles. We have some going up 25,000 miles between oil changes, and doing it safely. And that's how good the oils really are. Now, if you have contamination going on, which you need to know about through fluid analysis, then things are different. But if it's not getting contaminated through coolant or fuel, which we look at, if those things aren't bleeding into the oil, then those oils can go a really, really long time. And so can you imagine how much fuel you could buy if you're not doing a $400 oil change or a $600 transmission fluid change? That's a lot of fuel you can buy, or family dinners, or
more sightseeing.
Yeah, right. So the return on investment is enormous for fluid analysis. Plus, you're increasing your overall reliability.
Is that based on improvements in oil or improvements in the other components, or a combination of both?
It's really a combination of both, but the oils have improved drastically over the years. And really that's been, I don't know how deeply you want to go into this. I could talk all day on oils, but the whole thing that drives that is the EPA requirements for oils to withstand heat more, because vehicles, buses and things like that, trucks, are being more and more enclosed because of noise restrictions. They're being insulated. And so the engine and the transmissions run much, much hotter than they used to. Well, in order to do that, the oil companies had to formulate the oils so that they would take that heat for a longer period of time. So heat is really not a factor today. There are three factors that determine oil life. One is oxidation resistance, which is how well does it stand up to heat. Then the other one, or the second one, would be viscosity, or the thickness of the oil, and how does that change over time because of forces and stresses. And the third one is contamination. You could have the best oil in the world, but if it gets contaminated inside the engine or the transmission through normal means, from a leaky injector or a leaky coolant system, then that's not oil anymore because it's got other things in it. And so that affects oil life. And the same thing happens with coolants. They can get contaminated, and then that restricts their life. And that's really why you have to do fluid analysis and do it religiously, either annually or periodically of some sort. And we have all that information on our RV webpage on our website, the recommended sampling frequencies based on a component. And that's a roundabout way of answering your question, and maybe went into too much detail, but I think folks have to understand that there's a lot of science behind this, and it's a proven science. It's been around for a while. And
we're going to share those charts also on our website so that people can listen and view it at the same time.
Okay. Yeah, that's great, because basically it boils down to, for transmissions and cooling systems and generators, generally once a year is okay. For an engine, because of the environment in an engine, blow-by gases and things like that, you've got a lot more going on in the engine. And so we recommend that you do a fluid analysis instead of doing an oil change. So let's say you're rolling up on what you think you ought to change your oil. You ought to sample it first because it's likely to come back and say, you really don't need to change the oil. Check it again next scheduled oil change or next year.
Also, by doing that, it's going to come up and let you know that everything's working okay and there is no contamination, or it's going to come up and tell you that maybe something is contaminated and that you need to take a closer look at what's going on in your engine and try to catch something. I always feel anyway that you're going to catch a problem before it's a big, catch it at a small problem before it becomes a catastrophe, which is going to save you tons of money.
Yeah, when you think about a motorhome, let's think about a motorized motorhome for a minute. And I hate to go back with the Class A's because a lot of people are Class B and Class C owners, but the Class A's are, of course, the most expensive, a big diesel pusher. There are really two environments there, if you will, for lack of a better word. So you have a chassis, and then you have the home that sits on top of the chassis. Well, everything inside or above the floor, above the chassis, it's expensive. You have refrigerators and things like that, and expensive items, but nothing like the chassis. I mean, the chassis, the driveline alone could be $50,000 easily, and maybe more, probably more. If you've got a $20,000 Allison 3000 or 4000 series transmission, a $25 or $26, I'm not the marketing guy, I'm the technical guy, but that's generally what it costs, $25 or $26, depending on how many kits you buy and things like that. You get unit discounts, but let's say it's $25 a test. Well, $25 against a $20,000 transmission, and that's just the transmission. That's not pulling it and changing it out and things like that. It's really a huge return on investment because you learn one of two things. Either there's maintenance that needs to be required, or you've got some insidious problem that's really going to get critical fast that you need to really pay attention to. And that report would come back as critical. Or it'll come back and say, keep on trucking, have fun, and we'll see you again next year. Check it because everything's okay and there's no need for maintenance.
Yeah, so it's saving you really in two different ways. It's either saving you by letting you know that everything is okay and you don't need to change it, which is going to save you money, or it's going to come back and tell you things are not okay and you need to pay attention, which will save you money. I think that's great for $26. Man, what a deal, really. When you think about what it's going to save you.
There's a couple of things that I like to tell folks. One is it's like a blood test for the component in that it looks to, just like you go to the doctor and you give a blood test and it comes back and there's all this gobbledygook data, lipids and this, that, and the other, and you don't really understand that stuff. Well, that's why there's somebody there to interpret it for you, the doctor. And okay, so I'm the doctor in this case, and and I say, here's what it says, and here's what you need to pay attention to. The other thing I like to say is it's really health care for a vehicle. That's what it is. It's not unlike yearly checkup at the doctor's office.
I'm a medical person by background. I've worked in labs for 25 years. When we were looking at your website, I immediately thought it's like checking blood and urine at an annual health checkup. So I'm glad you make the same comparison. Let's say if I'm at the doctor and my cholesterol is borderline, they might say, have it checked again in 6 months, and we'll see what happens. Is that sort of similar to the recommendations that people would get? It could say, we recommend checking your transmission fluid again in 3 months or 6 months. Or is that schedule on your website pretty much how you should run it?
The schedule on our website is how you start out.
Okay.
But if we see a bad report, we do exactly what you just said. We'll come back and say, check it again at half the interval. So if, let's say our website said to check it annually and it came back bad, we're going to say check it semi-annually, or basically we say at half interval. So that would be 6 months. So yeah, that's exactly what we did, because if you have a problem, if you're monitoring any system, whatever it is, you want to increase the sampling frequency if you're finding problems so that you can respond, get things fixed, and then monitor it again and see if you actually fixed the system. That's sort of for anyone out there who's a statistics guy, that would be, or gal, that would be a statistical process control. That's what you're doing, actually, is you're taking data and you're making adjustments to the system to make sure that the system then conforms and remains reliable, and you're catching problems here and there.
And you're actually able to take a look at more systems than I realized. I mean, we're talking your engine oil or the transmission and coolant, but you had mentioned earlier that you can have, what was it, an aqua hot system check?
Yeah, a lot of the bigger motorhomes have, onboard heating systems for showers, and they'll even preheat the engine on a cold morning. Some of them are designed to do that. And those systems, again, have a very important component, and that is the fluid itself. In this case, it's a coolant, but it's called a heat transfer fluid. But you can still use our coolant kit to check it. You just need to tell us it's from an aqua hot system.
Okay.
Real quickly, there are basically two different fluids out there. One is from Camco. It's a pink fluid. And the other one's from Century Oil, and that's kind of a lime green color. But we check both of those fluids. And so, yeah, we can check aqua hot systems on an annual basis. Aqua hot has a kit, but it looks at glycol content, and that's pretty much about it. So we check that. We check freezing and boiling points, pH, all kinds of things. So the fluid remains, you're checking up on it. If it needs to be changed, we'll tell you.
Okay.
And we can also pick up wear in the system. Like if you have an impeller on those systems, the pump impellers, if they're wearing, we can pick that up. Yeah. So you really get two things in a report, whether it's oils or coolants. You get what's the condition of the oil or coolant, and then you also get how is the system responding to changes that are taking place in those oils and coolants. Does the engine like what it's seeing, or is it wearing? You get to see inside the component what's going on, in addition to whether or not the oil or coolant itself is remaining stable or changing.
So let me ask you too, Tom. Somebody has this test performed and they get the results and they're now looking at their form and their paperwork. And I know that you guys do the color coding, which I had this test. I think most of my viewers anyway know that I had this test performed, and I thought it was very easy for me to take a look at it and see, hey, green is good, red is bad, obviously, and then you had your yellow and orange. But when somebody else is looking at this, other than the colors, do they get contacted by somebody at the company to go over the results?
I guess my answer to that would be that probably in 95% of cases, people are good with the report as is and don't need to call us. Sometimes there are special things that people are a little concerned about, and they're welcome to call us. Right on top of the report is a customer service number. I answer a lot of those myself.
That was what would be my next question. I know when I had the results that you were the one that actually went over the results with me, and I was like, Tom cannot be sitting here and then talking to each person, but you do actually. That's pretty amazing, Tom.
We're still, I'll say, small enough that we're growing. In fact, our growth rate is really good. But we're small enough that I want to pay attention to my customers, and I'll help them as much as I possibly can. And so, if they need to talk to me directly, that's fine with me. I have time to do that. But also our sales department is trained and we have customer service folks. So most things can be answered. And in fact, the report itself, we point people to two things. One is the red, yellow, green, what's called a severity rating at the top of the report. And that pretty much tells you, and those colors are related to normal, abnormal, or critical. And so that tells you just real quickly the overall severity of the report. And then the color codes are matched to data on the report. So it points your eye to, if I've got critical and it's red, then we'll point out the data in red that gave us that overall rating. And then in addition to that, we have a comments section where we'll give comments and recommendations. And some of them are pretty detailed about, this could be coming from a cracked injector or too much idling, or it could be check your cooling system because we're finding coolant in your oil, things of that nature. So like I said, I don't have the exact data, but I would say 95% of the time, the oil report or the coolant report themselves can answer most of those questions. But if the customer is really concerned about something, they can call us, and I get involved all the time if I need to.
Yeah, you're bursting my bubble a little bit, Tom. I thought I was getting special treatment. I thought I was special for a little while there.
Well, like I said, my company is growing, but we're still at the point where I interact with folks a lot. And so you're liable to get me if you call in. Our sales guy answers a lot of questions, but he'll often say, "Oh, this is for Tom." Okay. Call him.
You mentioned abnormal results, and I know you have different levels of abnormal. So there's critical problems or critical things that you can see with the analysis, and then there's abnormal things that are not quite as critical. So first, how often do samples come back with an abnormal or critical reading? And do you give a recommendation of what the customer should do if these results occur? So it sounds like you do give a possible diagnostic of why this problem could be occurring. With that information, can they take that to their mechanic and have further studies done on it?
Yes. Yeah. We try to tell the customer as much as we can, without, we don't want to say what we don't know, of course. And so we'll point people in the right direction. Like, commonly this is due to a cracked injector, or this is commonly seen when we have a coolant leak coming into the oil or something of that sort. So we'll point them in the direction that, if it's critical, you probably, unless you're a real gearhead, you probably need to take it to whatever the component is, you probably need to take it in and have somebody look at it. And generally that's covered in the report. Typically it is. But in addition to that, I sent to you folks, I went back and looked in our database and looked over 5 years. As an engineer for years, I learned to work with statistics. And so I went back 5 years and I looked at statistically, what's the likelihood of having a problem with your RV system? And so, and I think you guys can post that on your website if you'd like, this chart. And it's a 5-year summary of RV fluid analysis results. And what it shows in a nutshell is that we have by far the most problems in coolants, more so than oils. And in fact, over 50% of samples, and this is 1,100 samples I looked at. So it's a large database, and it's really statistically significant. So over 50% of our coolant samples come back in the abnormal range, and 11% of all of those samples come back critical. So, and my theory there, and I don't know this for sure, but I think I'm probably right. I think people tend to change oils, but they don't really pay attention to their coolant. And I think that's true of a lot of folks, unless, fleets don't do that. They know how to do that. But individuals, they tend to know that they have oil, it needs to be changed, but they kind of forget about the cooling system. So we find a lot of cooling system problems. Again, on this chart over the 5 years, I broke this down into 4 categories. One is diesel engine oils, transmission fluids, unleaded gasoline engine oil samples, and then coolant samples. And really the diesel engines, the oil samples have the least amount of issues. And I'll just go over the statistics real quick, and folks can see this on your website. But for diesel engines, 18% are abnormal and only 2% are critical. Wow. For transmissions, which is basically automatic transmissions in motorized RVs, you don't really see manuals. But automatic transmissions, 35% of them are abnormal in some way. And basically that's usually because they're worn out. Transmission fluids tend to thin out, and then you pick up wear. So 35% are abnormal, 3% are critical. Unleaded gasoline engines, about 50% of those, they're about like coolants, about 50% of those have abnormal results and 9% are critical. So again, folks can look at this actual chart on their website, but the so what of all that is that unless you're doing testing, you just don't know if you're in the 50% crowd. You don't know if your glass is half empty or half full. So you really need to do this to check things out. And then yearly monitoring, because of this, you can see where it would increase overall system reliability and get you out of the knee-jerk problems where, you're going down the road, you're happy, you're on vacation, and all of a sudden your engine decides to give up the ghost, or your transmission decides to quit because the fluids went bad and you didn't know it. And then you're looking at a tow bill, and you're looking at time out of service and all kinds of problems when you could have learned this when the motorhome was put away for the winter or whatever. You just don't want problems on the road, and this is the best way to ensure that you don't have that.
Yeah, I was really surprised when I looked at this chart at the big difference between the diesel engine oils and the unleaded gasoline engine oils. I am completely ignorant about oil configuration, so the difference really jumped out at me.
Well, one of those is because diesel engines in general are designed to go, especially, if you've got like a Cummins ISL or you've got a Cat C15 or something like that, those engines are designed for 500,000 miles of service. I mean, they just are. And you'll find those engines out there 20 years old. But unleaded gasoline engines are I won't say they're not as reliable, but I'll say that the engineering that goes to they're more, I don't want to put this, they're more of a disposable item than a diesel is.
Okay.
And that's maybe not the right words, but I think this shows that overall a diesel is probably more reliable, and the oils themselves are maybe more reliable. But I'm just going by what these statistics are showing.
Right. Yeah.
And my years of engineering, I think that's probably true. Looking at from a design standpoint, what are you designing the overall vehicle to do, and what's its design life and things like that.
I looked at this chart, but you're right, Sean. That is a huge difference. 18% for abnormal for a diesel and 53% abnormal for an engine, or 49% rather.
But you'll notice the sample size too, if you're looking at the chart, and folks can see this. The sample size is different too for the unleaded gasoline engines. We don't have as many samples. Statistically, that would mean that you're probably looking at more variation. If you're not a statistician, you may not understand this concept, but I would say overall the diesel engine data is more reliable and probably less varied than the gasoline engine oil. Overall, this just needs to be done, and needs to be done periodically, because there are a lot of problems. Now, once you do this, I like to think of this as a funnel. You have all these problems that start, and as you do this over time and monitor more and more and get things fixed, the system gets more and more reliable. You find out things, you fix it, and then you eliminate problems over time, and then your system runs better and better all the time to a point. And then you reach a point of what's called the point of diminishing returns. You're either sampling too often. That's the point where your system is going to be stable at some point. That's one of the overall things you get from doing this, is you get to look at the history. If you keep sampling the same piece of equipment, we can show the history of 10 years of sampling. Here's another reason this is valuable, is because if you get ready to sell that motorhome and you have data showing that you've been doing oil and coolant analysis for 5 years, let's say there are 5 motorhomes out there that people are selling, and an individual has access to all 5. And let's say one of them has a complete history of maintenance along with oil and coolant analysis. One has a complete history of changing oils and coolants, and the other ones, they're just kind of scrambled. There's either no history or fragmented history and uncertainty about what was done. It would be more valuable, in my opinion, to look at the motorhome where the guy's got a complete set of maintenance history, including oil and coolant analysis test results. I can't put a number on it, but there's some value there.
I think it's huge.
Yeah. I don't think Sabrina and I would purchase another RV that didn't have some type of service history on a fluid analysis, where you could actually look back and see just the overall health of that RV before you purchase it. I think is a huge advantage.
Right. And when we talk to a couple of folks that run the National RV Inspectors Association, one is Terry Cooper and the other one is Steve Anderson. When we sat down and talked to those guys a few years ago, they saw right off the bat how important this was to include this and integrate it into training for RV inspectors. So all those RV inspectors, the NRVIA RV inspectors, are trained to pull samples because it is so important.
Yeah, I would imagine that they save people, a headache in the future. If they have a motorhome and it's inspected by the NRVIA and they do a fluid analysis, I bet you those guys have found major red flags that have saved somebody from purchasing an RV that might have just fell apart mechanically fairly quickly. This is almost being able to take an x-ray and look at the inside of your engine and your transmission components and seeing exactly what's wrong with it. I bet you these guys have saved people thousands and thousands of dollars, tens of thousands of dollars.
Yeah, they do. I'll just give you 3 examples. And I don't know personally these stories. I know these are true, that people have been saved from buying a lemon just through the fluid analysis reports, because I talk to the inspectors all the time and get, feedback from them on how things are going and, what are they finding. And so there are stories of people doing that, saving themselves from buying a lemon by including fluid analysis as part of the inspection. These 3 guys are all down in Florida, and they all have their own websites. And I think they have Facebook pages too, but I'll just say their names, and they're all certified inspectors. One is Art Horton. Next one is Jeff Baker. And the other one is Al Pierce. These guys have a lot of experience. These 3 particular guys seem to do a lot of volume. And on their websites, I think they even have some of these stories about people that have been saved by that. If you find a major problem with the transmission, you find major wear issues or wear issues in an engine, you might want to walk away from that one and look for another one, because unless you can negotiate into the deal, and that's another important aspect of this. Let's just say it needs an oil change or a coolant change. Well, that could be anywhere from $250 to $400 or more just for that work on a big motorhome. Just like a house inspection, it's no different than a home inspection. If there's major wear issues, then you probably want to just walk away from that deal. But if it's just an oil change or a coolant change, that could be negotiated in with the deal. That's another value of doing fluid analysis and getting that from a certified inspector who's been trained to do that.
I'm a fifth wheel owner, and I pull my fifth wheel with a Chevy 3500 diesel. I noticed on your chart, you also have the sampling frequency recommendations for the fifth wheel tow vehicle. I've been on the road.
And the onboard generator if you have one.
Yes. And I've been on the road for 4 years and I haven't had this done. So now I'm a little afraid of what I'm going to find out when I do this. But I think people need to remember the tow vehicle, you should be doing this same analysis on your fluids there, because just like the engines and transmissions and generators in a Class A diesel pusher, your tow vehicle could have the same issues.
I was going to say, at a lot of these tow vehicles, some of these trucks, when I go around and talk to some of these people, they're telling me that they're spending 70 to 80 grand on some of their diesel pickup trucks. I don't know if that's true or not. I don't know if those things get that expensive, but some people I've talked.
It's true.
Oh,
really?
yeah.
Wow.
It's true.
Easily, if they have a dually and they have a diesel engine with an Allison 1000 series transmission behind it, yeah, those are expensive vehicles. They're built to be durable. A system is only as good as its weakest link, and that could be the fluid itself. So that's why you need to check it. On our website, we have an RV page on our website. You just go to www.jglubricantservices.com and then click on RV at the top. And all that information, there's tons of information there, but one of them is a paper that I wrote, and it's called All About Oils for RV and Tow Vehicle Owners. So you can download that and find out about the things I'm talking about: oxidation, viscosity, contamination. And then at the end of the paper, there's a nice little picture of me, and it tells my background. So kind of gives some credibility to what I'm saying. I did this for a number of years for Allison and for General Motors and for the U.S. Army.
What about the hydraulic systems in like fifth wheels? Should people be getting those fluids analyzed as well?
Yes. Generally, there's not a whole lot going on in a hydraulic system, but you still need to check it in case there's some kind of ingested dirt or debris of some sort, or water gets in the system. Generally, we want to check those on an annual basis, and they can be checked with our advanced oil analysis kits.
So, Tom, it's fairly easy for somebody to do this themselves. I did this myself, and I don't consider myself to be an extremely handy person, but I felt that it was fairly simple for me to just I watched your videos. You guys have a lot of videos on YouTube's, and it comes with instructions, and it didn't take that long. It was fairly clean as well. I was surprised that I didn't spill any oil anywhere, that when I was all done, there was no mess to clean up afterwards. But for some people, they're intimidated to maybe open up their hood and go inside the engine compartment. Is there a service somewhere that they can have this performed? I know NRVIA is one. I'm not sure if there's others. And then for the people that do want to do those themselves, can they order the kits from you? Is there any other places that they can maybe go into a store and pick it up?
Yeah, there's 3 different things. You can order directly from us, and that's just you go onto our website, www.jglubricantservices.com, and you'll see a big red button on there that says Buy Now, and that takes you to our online store, and we take credit cards. We also do PayPal, but we would direct people to buy advanced oil analysis kits and coolant test kit, and then you'll need the pumps, and those there's a coolant pump and an oil pump, and as you can imagine, we want you to buy both pumps. We don't want any cross-contamination between oils and coolants. Okay. And we explain that all on the website on our products page. But then also, if you're a do-it-for-me person, you want to get this done, but you don't necessarily want to do it yourself. It really is easy. As you mentioned, Kenny, I mean, we have hundreds of people doing this all the time, RV owners and tow vehicle owners for that fact. If you want, you can go to the NRVIA. These are the certified NRVIA inspectors, and that's www.nrvia.org/locate. And you can just put in your address or your zip code, I believe, and you can search 50, 100, or 200 miles, something like that. and it'll give you all the inspectors that are available close to you, and you can call them. And you have to have a level 2 inspectors. Level 1s don't have the training for oil analysis sampling yet, but the level 2 inspectors, they can all pull samples for you. The third way would be to go to Camping World and pick up one of our kits.
Okay.
And the thing you need to know about the Camping World kits is they've been out there for a while. So there's an Atlanta lab. We had 4 labs at one time. Indianapolis is our main lab, and that's our headquarters. And then we have a Houston lab and a Salt Lake City lab. There was a lab in Atlanta that we used for a while, but the QC wasn't good enough for us, so we dropped them. In the Camping World kits, that Atlanta lab is still referenced, but we'd want folks, if they purchase the kit, and those are just oil kits. They're not coolant kits. But if you purchase from Camping World, you don't want to send the sample to Atlanta because it won't get there. That lab has been closed since then. But there are still a lot of those kits available. So folks can buy those kits, and we can convert those kits over to coolant test kits. Each kit has a barcode assigned to it. It's like a UPC code. And all we have to do is once that's scanned in, it relates back to where it came from and where they bought it. And we can straighten that all out. We can assign that to your own new account from Camping World. So those are the 3 things. You can buy direct from us. You can have an NRVIA certified inspector pull a sample for you, or you can go to Camping World and buy one of our oil kits. But again, the Camping World kits are only oil kits, and they're the basic kits. So we would have to convert some things, but we can do that.
I know a question or a comment will probably be on this podcast. So if somebody does this themselves, they pull the samples, they send it in. How long until they get the results?
We have historical data on turnaround times, and that's generally 2 to 3 days, or sometimes it's 24 to 48 hours. It's right in that time frame. We generally say 24 to 48 hours from the time it's logged in at our laboratories.
And then the results are available through a link on your website as well?
A couple different ways. In the case of an inspector, the report is sent to him and then he sends it to his customer. But if you're just a direct customer of ours, you buy off of our store, then we record your email address and then we send you the reports directly. You sign up that you want reports. Because of anti-spamming laws, we don't just send reports to people unless they approve that. So generally when you sign up, part of the system says, hey, you need to connect to our database. That allows you to either go in and look at your data on our database, so you can look at your samples, you can download them, print them, or we also send you them and they show up in your email inbox. And our database is quite robust. It can do a lot of things that most people would have no desire to do. I mean, you can do statistical analysis, you can do all kinds of things. And real quickly, something stirred in my mind when I said statistical analysis, and that is, we mentioned the severity rating on the reports, 0 to 4, with 0 and 1 being normal, 2 and 3 being abnormal, and 4 being critical. The reason we do that is because that's a way of looking at a statistical distribution, if you will. So it shows you where you are with regard to a similar population of vehicles, engines, and oil types. We do this based on some mathematical models and algorithms that we keep secret. But what we're doing is we're comparing you with thousands of samples that are similar engines, similar oils, similar duty cycles, or vehicles. So you're being compared against a population, a statistical comparison. And that's the best way to do it, because you can't just look at things one at a time, because the duty cycle could be very, very abnormal. And so we have to include you in a population, a similar population. And so that's how we do that severity rating.
Okay.
Yeah, that's very similar to how we do it in the medical community.
Yes. And so let's say you do a blood report and you get back lipids and cholesterol and you get back, glucose levels and things like that. Well, they'll have a number assigned to them, but those are statistics. And then you'll have a range. Statistically, This is where you are in the range.
Right.
And if you're what's known as an outlier, that means you're out there a long ways from the average. And so you're typically notified, hey, you need to have this checked out because this is not normal.
Right.
And so it's very, very similar to a blood test, or what I say is, health care for your vehicle. We're doing the same things a medical laboratory would do. In fact, we are ISO, the International Standards Organization. We are ISO, all of our labs are ISO 17025 approved and certified, which requires us to make sure that our data is accurate, repeatable, QCs in place, and quality controls. So We do it right.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I think that's an important point to make, because having the ISO certification, again, gives your lab and your reports a lot more credibility than someone who did not take that step to get that certification.
Yeah, there are a lot of inspectors out there that can pull samples, but most of them don't. Just the NRVIA is trained to do this. So there are inspectors out there who will come out and inspect your motorhome, but there's a big difference between a certified and non-certified inspector. A lot of them, I mean, I've seen them. You can go in and look on YouTube, and you'll find inspectors doing motorhomes, and I'm sure they're trying to do a good job, but they'll pull the dipstick and say, "Yep, there's oil in it." That's pretty much it. And so that tells you nothing other than somebody changed the oil or somebody added oil to it. You don't even know if it's oil.
Right.
So you're assuming that's oil because it kind of looks like it. But there are inspectors, and then there are inspectors, if you will. And we talked about Camping World a while ago. A number of years ago, I used to go from state rally to state rally for the Good Sam Club. I'd follow those, and I'd go in and teach a class. And if you go to our RV webpage, you'll find those class slides at the bottom on the right. I think it's called Blood Test for Your RV. And so if you're having trouble sleeping at night or if you're just a gearhead and want to know all this stuff, grab a coffee and go through those slides, and you can learn a lot. There's a lot of really good information on how oils are manufactured, how they're tested, who's involved in that. So it gives you some of the, it's not Tom Johnson on a chip, but it's close. I mean, you can find out a lot of good detailed information there.
Very good. Well, I think, Tom, that's all of our questions for today. Is there anything that you would like to add that maybe we forgot to ask, or something that you want to throw in here at the end?
Well, I think we've covered a great deal of things, but again, I want to plug both the NRVIA and my company, JG Lubricant Services. And again, if folks just want to go to our website, jglubricantservices.com, there's a ton of information there. There's a technical tab, there's a products tab, but especially if you're RVers, which I know that's what your audience is concerned the most with. If they're RVers, click on the RV tab. There's videos there, how-to videos, if you want to try to do this yourself, which is very easy. Kenny, you did it yourself. You said it was easy. There's the recommended sampling frequencies. There's my technical paper all about oils for RV owners and tow vehicle owners. There's those slides. There's a lot of information there. So if folks go there, that's a good starting place. And then if they want to buy, we recommend our core kit, which is our advanced oil analysis for engines and transmissions and generators, and then our coolant kits. And we sell those in singles and 3-packs, our oil kits and our coolant kits. And then there is, if you want to do this, if you have a number of vehicles like your RV service center, then we sell those in 10-packs, and that's on our fleet page, and there's a button there, and the pricing is much better in 10-packs. But hopefully that gets people pointed in the right direction and gets them started doing what turns out to be a very important thing. Of course, they can call us, and our number is 877-971-7799. 1 for sales and 2 for technical support. And we can answer most of your questions, get you started.
Thanks, Tom. And I just added it to my list this weekend to order one of those kits and see what I've been missing out on for the last 4 years. Based on our discussion today, I think it is a very important and valuable tool for RV owners.
Yeah, it's on tow vehicles, you're mostly concerned about the engine oil, the engine coolant, and the transmission fluid. And you check that and do it annually, and your tow vehicle is going to be as reliable as and as worry-free as possible.
We want to thank you for stopping by, Tom, and giving us all this great information.
Thank you so much. And again, give us a call or visit our website, and we'll be happy to help.
We want to thank everyone for tuning in today's episode, and thank Tom Johnson for his time. To learn more about JG Lubricants and their services, be sure to check out their website at jglubricantservices.com.